We're calling the segment on GBTV the Liberty Treehouse because I want to take a closer look at history. And let's do it here with the Liberty Treehouse. 250 years ago, people were fleeing Great Britain in search of freedom. Once again, they came to a far-off distant land. This time they came to America. King George III of England continued to be a tyrant, even though modern historians will try to soften his existence. The king vowed to, and I quote, I love this, keep the rebels harassed, anxious, and poor until the day when, by a natural and inevitable process, discontent and disappointment were converted into penitence and remorse. Charming to the very last drop. Thomas Jefferson tended to disagree with the good old king, and he wrote about it explicitly in a little document many of our citizens used to know as the Declaration of Independence. In it, Thomas Jefferson listed 27 grievances against the king. Some homework for you tonight. Take a look at some of these because you might be shocked. When's the last time anybody read the Declaration of Independence all the way through? Have you read it all the way through lately? Anybody? One? You should two. We should read it again. Do it tonight. See how many of the grievances resemble some of the current grievances of our current countrymen in Washington. It's pretty amazing. One of the grievances served as the tipping point to the Revolutionary War. You're familiar with it. It was the Stamp Act. The king wanted to tax any paper, that was newspapers, magazines, legal documents, diplomas, playing cards, anything. The colonists, who were already overtaxed, protested. And as James Otis is famously attributed as saying, he said, taxation without representation is tyranny. And on August 14th, 1765, remember, 1776, that's a long way away yet, a small group of colonists, just regular average working Joes, known as the Loyal Nine, a group that would later turn into the Sons of Liberty, staged a protest against the Stamp Act. The protest site was in Hanover Square in Boston. All day the protesters gathered. They overcrowded and they blocked the streets. I was looking back here like they were going to have a picture of it. I'm like, no, not in 1765. Many spoke to the crowd, and they wanted people to pay attention to them. The crowd grew in number as the days went on, and they started talking about their rights as free men. By the day's end, emotions ran so high that effigies of tax collectors were hung from the large tree that they were meeting under. They eventually cut the effigies down from the tree, stuffed them in a coffin, and then paraded them around town, stopping at the old State House to protest. They burned the effigy and the coffin in front of the tax collector's home. So they didn't have the whole new tone thing down. I don't know what CNN said about them or the Democrats, but it was probably pretty ugly. But the passion was evident. But the monument really was this giant 100-foot tree that the protests began under. It became an instant symbol of the movement. The next month after the protest, on September 11th, believe it or not, one citizen brought a small copper plate and placed it on the trunk of the tree with the inscription, "The Tree of Liberty," on September 11th. Many simply refer to it as the Liberty Tree. The symbolic idea of the Liberty Tree rippled across the colonies, and before long, most towns and cities had their own Liberty Tree in the town square. The protests continued. 8 months after the uprising, the Stamp Act was rescinded. The colonists celebrated, but the fight had just begun. The only real reason the repeal happened was because the British Parliament simultaneously passed the Declaratory Act, which gave them the right to direct taxation anywhere within the empire in all cases whatsoever. And so clearly more taxes were coming. Does any of this sound familiar? The battle wasn't over, although the Brits didn't know it. They were in big, big trouble. Once a frustrated mob of colonists had become organized and united, and the Liberty Tree was the unifying symbol, and it was the thing that brought everybody together. It also became a rallying point where most of the great political meetings of the Sons of Liberty were held, right underneath a tree, including their most infamous event, the Boston Tea Party in 1773. The British ridiculed the idea of the Liberty Tree. One instance, they tarred and feathered a man and made him parade around it. In 1775, the British came and in the siege of Boston, knowing that it was an emotional and symbolic site for the colonists, the original Liberty Tree was cut down and renamed the Liberty Stump by the British. 50 years later, French military hero, let me say that again, a French military hero, who knew they existed, stopped at the corner where the original Liberty Tree once stood and said, quote, the world should never forget the spot where once stood the Liberty Tree, so famous in all your annals. We did forget. In 1966, Boston Herald ran a story about, there isn't anything about the Liberty Tree. Does anybody even remember it? It was just a dirty old plaque covered in bird poop there at the location of the original Liberty Tree. There was a building 3 stories up. It was blocked by a business sign, and it was in the district where you went to get hookers. It had kind of fallen into disrepair. It was eventually cleaned up a little bit, and they placed a new plaque there on the spot. And there it is, the place where the original Liberty Tree was. I personally don't think that's good enough. We've decided to come up with another one. You show the Liberty Tree. There it is, the Liberty Tree House. This is the new logo for something that will begin, I think, when is it, Tiffany? In 2 weeks from now?
Monday at 4 o'clock, Glenn.
2 weeks will travel fast. It's this Monday. God designed us to be free. The armies of darkness, those who believe in systems of oppression and control, I have to tell you, I hope that they don't see us coming. The good thing is the promise that God makes us that darkness doesn't understand the light. They'll never see us coming. You can believe the lie that what you really need is government control of everything, but it is just that. They hope that you will forget the Sons of Liberty and others like them that sacrificed to give us the freedom we have today. They hope that you are unaware that freedom is rare and precious. They hope that you will believe that democratic revolutions will lead to more freedom. It is the only way they can gain and control power. The Liberty Tree can't just be a plaque in Boston. It has to be something that lives in each of us. We intend to make sure that we never forget where our freedom comes from at GBTV, and we will be the people that help preserve it and pass the knowledge on from generation to generation. The restoration must begin with us teaching it to our youth. That is why we created the Liberty Treehouse, a program for you and your kids. And you will find it only here, beginning next Monday at 4 p.m. It's time to teach the truth in the shade of the Tree of Liberty.